Welcome to the Expert Talks by Kalkine TV. I'm Sage. Today's guest is Mr Alpesh Doshi. He's the founder and CEO of Fintricity. So to give you some background, Fintricity was founded back in 2001, has been at the forefront of big data technology and the digital transformation. They're entrepreneurs at heart, and Fintricity takes a business-first approach to match the right blend of solutions and technologies to solve their clients' specific business and IT challenges. So we're keen to find out more. Bringing you live today, we have Mr Alpesh Doshi, founder and CEO at Fintricity. Welcome to the show, Alpesh.
Hello, hi.
Well, we're keen to hear your insights today about the digital transformation. It's at the centre of today's business world. The markets are driven by some sort of cyber capitalism. And as an individual who's working at the core of it, in your opinion, how does digital transformation change the way companies create value, please?
Well, I think, the main driver is, in the last couple of years, we've seen digitization of businesses. The challenge has been that COVID has driven the need to be digital. When you worked in the office, you didn't need to really think about how you're going to have a digital business. But now everybody's thinking about how do you serve your customers digitally. Being able to transform your business internally to be efficient, being able to deliver services electronically and digitally is a real driver that we've seen accelerate over the last couple of years.
That's fantastic to hear, especially because COVID and digitisation requires a lot of humanity involved in it. I mean, the three E's of effectiveness, efficiency and engagement have come so much more into the forefront. And we've entered 2022. What are your expectations with the upcoming opportunities for AI in this year, please?
I think, AI has been around for 3 or 4 years, 5 years as the hype. I think the reality of actually making a transformation and applying AI to your business is really hard. One of the key things you have to do is really get your data right. If you can't get your data right, being able to do AI across your business is really, really hard. Even though the technology exists, the implementation and operationalization of AI into a business is also hard. You have to change your business processes. You have to change your business model. You have to really look at your business and figure out where AI could apply. And the reality is that again, we're really early on the application of AI in almost every business.
Well, change management is one of the biggest areas that managers can sometimes find challenging because of things like bottlenecks and learning and development that's involved with that for looking after your staff. So it's a big deal without a doubt. So your business helps other fintechs and other operations to make this change. Is that correct?
Yes. What we do is, as you said at the beginning, we're entrepreneurs at heart, and I always look at businesses from the perspective of how do you modernize and survive in the 21st century. If you're not going to change the way you do business, then you'll get left behind. And we're seeing that with so many businesses. If you don't transform your business and become digital, use data, make your business model more efficient, make your digital services active, then really you're going to find it difficult in the future to survive as a business, because other people are also driving that change. And that change has been stark from a perspective of seeing over the last couple of years. If you're not digital and you can't serve your customers digitally, you've seen that really change and lose business. So the transformation of every business is going to happen in the next few years.
Okay, and now we're really keen to talk about the trends that we're observing, because we're in such a time of change and there's some very interesting things going on. But in your opinion, how can AI be used by businesses without losing jobs? I think a lot of people are hesitant about things like AI and these super robots that could possibly take the place of people's jobs. What's your opinion on that before we move on?
I think it's a misnomer, actually. I know that Elon Musk has said that AI is going to replace all jobs, but I think the reality is we're a long way from that. I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. I think there are more jobs coming. And as with any new industry and new technology, if you look at the web over the last 15, 20 years, what happened was jobs got displaced, jobs got changed, new jobs emerged, and people trained for those new jobs. And so, rather than AI being a threat to employment, I think it's an opportunity for everybody to retrain or to train differently. And there are bigger opportunities emerging rather than actually job reductions. As I'm sure data scientists are really, really hard to find. But anybody could train to be a data scientist. So I think the reality is that I don't think you're going to lose jobs. I think you're going to create new jobs. And so therefore, if you're not in the digital and AI world, I would think about how you could be participating in it. And actually, loads of the big companies like Google and others provide free training for you to be able to train in these kinds of skills too.
That is such a fantastic point. I have noticed how much free education there is available for this type of work, just to, pique curiosity into it. So thank you for raising that point. And about Elon Musk, funny you've brought him up when talking about AI, but I think he's got a pesky bot that's giving him some grief at the moment. He's got some teenager tracking his personal jet around on some social media platform. So that's his battle with AI at the moment. Now, Alpesh, if we could talk about the mega trends that we're observing. We're seeing the emergence of the Metaverse. How do you think this is going to affect human resources and the workplace in general?
I have to say, I think the Metaverse has been tried several times, a couple of times over the last 5-10 years. I think the convergence of the maturity of technology, the convergence of bandwidth and data, the convergence of AI and modeling, the convergence of headsets being able to actually get a great experience. All of those things are converging. I think what happens for me is things succeed when a whole different set of technologies, business model, market all converge to make something happen. And obviously the catalyst has been really Facebook changing their brand to Meta and Zuckerberg investing billions and billions of dollars in that. And that's the catalyst, I think, which potentially will transform and get adoption around the Metaverse. However, I think as with all new technologies, they take time to adopt. When the web came along in the late 90s, it took a long time to get mass adoption. When mobile phones and smartphones came along, only recently have we really got 70-80% penetration. So I think the Metaverse is here to stay. However, I think it will stay as a niche thing for probably 2 to 3 years, maybe even 5 years before it becomes mainstream.
Right, thank you so much for sharing that. So you often talk about climate innovation in your line of work. How can artificial intelligence help us achieve our sustainability goals and fight climate change, in your opinion? It's a big topic there, a lot to unpack. But how can organisations work upon the same, please?
Well, I think the challenge with climate change, everybody, a lot of the big companies are talking about net zero. And if you start asking them and say, okay, well, how are you going to get there? Very few of them actually know how they're going to get there, how they're going to reduce their carbon emissions. One of the applications of AI is to be able to model and predict what your carbon emissions are and then enable you to plan to get to net zero. So AI, if you're talking about a supply chain, just as an example, and you're moving goods around the world, any company that moves goods and services around the world can model and predict what their emissions are going to be. And AI is a central part of that. The challenge with something like a supply chain, it can be really, really complex. There are so many moving parts and there are so many scenarios. So as an example, if you're doing route planning the route in which you get your goods delivered from A to B, making that more efficient could actually reduce those emissions, for example. So AI is going to permeate through the whole sustainability industry, but we're pretty early days. I mean, one of the things that still is hard is actually measurement, collecting real data. So lots of estimations around, but actually collecting real data to be able to feed into and build those AI models is where the match will be. So, it will become pretty embedded into the whole sustainability activity, and companies will start getting smarter about saying, right, let's figure out how we're going to get to net zero or carbon zero. Some of the people we deal with want carbon zero, not net zero, but actually carbon zero. And AI will help them do that.
Well, that's fantastic to hear, because we're kind of needing to make a little bit more action on this topic. So it's great to hear that there possibly are some solutions. And with your energy crunch at the moment in the UK, now that's been quite a hot topic in the media, and I can see why efficiency and cost effectiveness would come so much more in the forefront now for many businesses. So like everything else, AI must also have its pros and cons, and we've spoken about pros and details. We've sort of mentioned what people could possibly be hesitant about, and that's AI taking over and people possibly losing jobs. Now let's talk about the other side of the coin, which is to delve a little bit deeper into some of the possible cons against AI, how AI has failed. Do you think we can overcome the failures in the future?
I think, there have been lots of failures. I think one of the statistics out there is 90% of models that are created don't get into production and are not used. But that is part of the cycle of change. That's a part of the cycle of learning. If you, in AI especially, a lot of it's about learning. It's about experimenting, building a model, testing it, see if it works, refining it, and continuing that iterative process. So, the cons are on AI is actually sometimes it takes a lot of time to actually get the model right. And sometimes you have to say, well, actually, I'm going to throw it away because it just does not work. So AI is not easy. The application of AI in a business is not easy to be successful. But figuring out and matching between a problem domain and understanding which aspect of AI can apply to solve that problem is still at the beginning. And that's the cons of AI, in the sense that actually we're pretty early in terms of real application of AI to scale in anger.
Thank you so much. And it's such an exciting space. We're really keen to see where the research and development will take us. And thank you for sharing your insights today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And if you just joined us, we had a very interesting discussion with Mr Alpesh Doshi, CEO and founder at Fintricity. Please watch the full interview via YouTube at Kalkine Media. And keep watching Kalkine for more expert talks and live market updates. And as we say, stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.